Hi, welcome to the Mom Files, Moments of Motherhood podcast, a place where the hard things have room to exist without shame.
If you're a mom, you'll get realistic routines, gentle validation, and encouragement to try new things. We're here to be your village, a judgment-free zone for modern motherhood. Take what fits for you and leave the rest.
We're happy you're here. Let's jump in. Welcome back. I'm Hav. And today is our season finale. As we mentioned in our last episode, this topic is really, really important. We're going to discuss self-advocacy, especially when it comes to your birthing experience. And we really want to talk about the extreme importance of it and being able to speak up for yourself, which is actually and can be really, really difficult to do, especially when you are going through the birthing process. So let's go get into it and talk about advocating for yourself with doctors. I'll start a little bit by saying that I think it does kind of start, this is where I have a hard time too. It starts at your doctor's appointments. I think if I won't say your doctors think you're a pushover, because I think ultimately, I have a hard time with doctors, but ultimately, your doctors do want what's best for you and they're doing what they think is best for you. But if you don't vocalize what you want and what you need out of the process, they're going to do what they think is best for you and they're going to push you to do what they think is best. So I think as much as you can speak up for yourself, especially towards the end of your pregnancy, but it can even start at the beginning. I know that's one thing I wish I did more was doctor shopping and telling doctors what I needed out from them and whatnot. But you can do that at the beginning and literally say, I'm looking for a doctor who is willing to do X, Y, and Z, or who is willing to understand that this is what I want. And we can get more into that. But I think learning to do it early, and it also helps you practice, right? For a lot of us, speaking up for ourselves and telling somebody who's an expert in the field that we might disagree with certain things can be really, really difficult. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to necessarily give, at least at my doctor's office, they don't give a lot of information up front. They just do you have any questions? You're healthy or you're not healthy? Have a good day. So I think self-advocacy can start with questions. But yeah, Aleea, I can go further into why I think it matters, but.
I want to add, I'm really glad you brought it up. It starts from the beginning, because I think the earlier you do it, the more, that means the more you'll do it and the easier it'll become. So it's the more you start to advocate yourself and especially early on, you can advocate yourself for the small stuff and things like that. But I also think it's important to advocate early because depending on where you are, the doctor that you're advocate could be the one that's helping you give birth to you. So it's you might as well start getting them prepared of what you're expecting, things like that. And we'll get more into this in a little bit, but I know for me, I had birth wishes, and I call them birth wishes just because things don't always go as planned. So it was these were things I was really hoping would go the way they would. And I brought them to my doctor and we went over them. And she, where we live, unfortunately, our doctors don't end up, it's just whoever's on call. But it was still nice because I'm if she did end up being that doctor, she would know. But two, she could still inform me of how the system worked, she has an idea. So even if it wasn't her, I was okay, I kind of had an idea of what to expect. So I definitely think advocacy early is important just because, the sooner you can do it, I think it gets you ready earlier. And then it's kind of, you're asking the less awkward questions early to prepare you.
And I will say it might be easier if you live in a larger area where there are more doctor options. I know for Aleea and I both, we pretty much kind of have one care option unless we're willing to drive out of our towns, which I have found difficult for me, where especially with my first pregnancy, I was kind of well, I get what I get and I don't throw a fit. And with this one, it's still kind of the same thing, but I know I, for myself, want to be a little bit more vocal about what I want and what I expect. And I like that. I like what you say, your birth wishes, because there's so much that can you don't know what your body's going to do or need exactly in the moment, but having those conversations can really help set you up for success, and exactly the practice helps. And I think it helps with that, but it's also preparing you mentally a little bit for it. But why should we have to advocate, right? Shouldn't the doctors just be well, this is what's new and whatnot? And I think for me is something I say all the time, but a lot, at least where I live, and a lot of people, doctors deal with a lot of people who are not necessarily as aware of what can happen in labor, what can happen in pregnancy, maybe not quite as conscious of like taking care of their bodies or like researching and actually like learning these things. So like I said at the beginning, the doctor is going to do what they think is best for your body. And I know where I live, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, there's a lot of young women who are pregnant who are dealing with so much more than just like being understanding that like the difference of Pitocin or an epidural or natural labor versus C-section, what can do for your bodies, episiotomies, like all these things are so much that goes into your doctor making decisions or like trying to help you make decisions. So if you're not advocating for yourself and letting them know that like these are things you're thinking about, as I would assume they're assuming, you don't know. And so they're going to tell you what they think is right for your body, whereas what they think is right for your body, like you might not agree with. And I know that was and is a really big one for me. And I ended up kind of like giving in more with Azzy. And as I've talked to Lee about this one, I want with this birth, still staying flexible, but I want to be a little bit more loud and a little bit more just like sure of the decisions I'm making. I still want like pretty much all the same things I wanted with Azzy, but I like let myself second guess it more. So I would say that's important too, is just making sure that you like don't second guess yourself. Like what you think is right is right. Listen to your doctor at the end of the day. Like, you know, I know my sisters, like they were big on like if baby doesn't come at 41 weeks, 40 weeks waiting and stuff. And every doctor's, I think it's like what, 41 and 6 or something like that is like when you get into dangerous territory or whatnot, but you can still listen to your body. There's things that you can do. So your doctor knowing what's important to you and you knowing what you want to stick with is going to make a big difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think you brought up an excellent point. A lot of doctors, like you said, they're well-intentioned, and a lot of things they're doing are just based off what most people do. If you're different and you have different wants and needs, then voice it. They aren't like, again, they're just, a lot of the times, to me, it's kind of like anything. You're doing what's normal. You know, they're going through the normal routine, but if you don't want the normal routine, that's fine. But yeah, it's important to ask the questions, and especially because they just might not know, like, something you might not want. There could be health reasons why you might not want that. There could be maybe you're allergic to it, whatever. But they see so many people, so they're not just going to make assumptions about you and like the things that you want. And so I think you make a great point. It's like, that's why it's important to advocate for yourself, because it's like what we always say, you're not going to get it unless you ask. How do you know, like if you want something and you want your pregnancy to go potentially a certain way, then guide it that way.
Yeah.
That's like the benefit of being an adult and being a mom and being able to do these things, is we have that free will to be able to control it. And that I think can be hard, as it doesn't seem like we do, but you do. You have a lot more control over your hospitals and like medical stuff, and not just with labor in general. And so I think that is important. And I do think that kind of does lead us into preparing for your appointment, like some tips, just because I wanted to kind of go back to the birth wishes, because I think what you were saying, really, that's where I think that's important. Because if you do want certain things, writing them down, like I said, having an idea of what you want, being able to discuss them. But it's nice because, like Hav said, it might not go exactly, but I still don't think it's bad to want it to go a certain way and to try and make it go a certain way. So yes, it's like, it's good to be flexible with it, but like you can still be flexible, but you can still want what you want.
Yes, absolutely. I think the flexibility comes into listening to our bodies, right? Like I mean, I didn't before, and that's a whole nother shit, but like I don't want Pitocin. But if we get to a point where my body is in like danger of like a C-section, I'd rather have Pitocin than a C-section. Or I would love to do labor without an epidural and see how my body can naturally, like let it do its thing. But there is a point where pain becomes too much and I want to do an epidural. Or there's, there are a lot of things where like you want something, but you kind of have to understand that like, it's to a point. But that's different than you getting in and your doctor being like, okay, epidural.
Right.
Or we're going to do Pitocin at 40 weeks. And why? Just because you're due.
The flexibilities for life threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the conversations that you have with your doctor early on also let you know if you need to switch doctors. I definitely don't, like, doctors aren't going to automatically be like, yeah, like, some doctors are going to be like, oh, I don't agree, like, 41 weeks, whatever, if we're just sticking on that topic. But if they're, like, completely just, like, dismissing you and being disrespectful and you have the options, switch doctors.
Oh, and that's without a doubt. If they are not on your side and that is not, like, definitely doctor shop. I think that's an excellent point. And I think another thing too to prepare is, like I said, you can make your birth wishes, but I think too, every appointment, try to come with like a couple questions that you have, and then make sure to note all of it in your phone or in your notebook, whatever. Keep track of it so you know what you've asked, what their answers were. And that way you're not like overwhelming. Cause I know, at least for me, my appointments are pretty quick. Our doctors have a lot that, that they have going on. A lot of times and I get it, they don't even remember what we talked about the last time, And so I think it's just good to note, because then if they don't remember, or if you need to remember, you could be like, oh, we talked about this at this appointment. And then it can also allow you to clarify if you need to. So I definitely think just other than your birth wishes, which actually I will know, I wrote my birth wishes there is a doctor who does births. Whatever. Anyway, she has a free webinar and she helps you walk through all the things, and she kind of helps explain it on medical terms because she is like a doctor. So I will also link that, because if you are someone who maybe don't know where to start, or you have some ideas, this is a great way. And I think it's only an hour long. It's free. And like I said, she also has a podcast about birth stories. So if you are looking for those things, I'll definitely link it, because I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I mean, I know I did like a lot of research. I didn't watch that, but I did a lot of research. And I will suggest, for like when you do go into labor, print it out in your bag so that you can give it to the nurses. Like we said, our doctors see so many people, and there's like a lot going on. They might not put it in they say they're going to put it in your chart. It might not end up there. Your nurses are the ones who are with you 98% of your labor. So give it to them and right up front, and they can put it like on your board and stuff.
I think I printed out like 3 of them. And I took one, like I said, early on so that we could like read through it, and like I made notes. And then I like the idea. I think I had one for like the nurses and then the doc. Just have a couple in case you need to give it to multiple people, or you lose one or whatever. So
yeah, or even if you want it for yourself, because it's a lot. And honestly, if it's helpful for you to like kind of have your backbone of having it in front of you.
I was just going to say, sometimes it's easier to advocate for yourself if you know what you're advocating for.
Absolutely. And I know, because with first pregnancy and everything I did, I brought it to my doctor. But even though I brought it to my doctor, there was some, what's the word?
Disconnect.
There was some disconnect. Just some and I also have to remind myself, we really do live in a day and age where a lot of people just want the medication and they want things to be easy and to just go with it or whatever. And I think my doctor at that time, because I was like, I'm in pain, I want to get her out of me. He was like, okay, we're going to do what we got to do to get her out of you, right? And when I asked questions that I wanted actual answers to and knowledge about, I think he kind of lumped me in with the women who were there are some women that, I'm not saying everyone, but there are some women who just want the simple answer. And he gave me the simple answer, and it was not accurate to what I needed to make a decision. And I made a decision that I don't even want to say I regret. I have a healthy, happy daughter, but
it just wasn't what you wanted, and you wish you had done it a different way.
Or at least given my body the chance to do it a different way and left flexibility for it to still go that way. So with this pregnancy, I know at my 24-week checkup, I was like, so when do we talk about labor? And my doctor was like, oh, I usually don't start talking about that until 30, 34, 35 weeks. And I was like, hey, I can wait. But just so you know, I have some there are things that I want you to be aware of. And that's how I know, do I have dreams of maybe having a little bit different of experience with my OB still to this day? Sure. But that's how I knew that like she was at least willing to listen. She was like, let's talk about it. What do you want for your labor? And my main thing is like a healthy and as natural of delivery as possible. I mean, I could go into like what I want, right? Like I don't want Pitocin. I did Pitocin with Azzy. That was the whole thing. Again, I'm super open to epidural, but I don't want one unless while I'm there, I decide, like, I don't want them to walk in and be like, here's your epidural. Like, I want to see what my body can handle, although I'm really nervous about it. So there are just things. And like, I was like, I want to go into labor naturally is my biggest one for this. And she was like, I hear you. Absolutely. I will let you know. Like 41 weeks is when I'm going to start to like, I'm going to say, yeah. And the thing is like, she's like, no, we're going to like at 41 weeks, we're going to put, what's it called? Induced labor. But you still can, like Aleea said, like they can't force you to go into labor. I will say some doctor's office will say that we will not serve you or whatever if you don't listen to. If you go into the ER to have, like, they're not going to turn you away. I do think there is like, listen to your doctors, right? They do know the concerns and stuff. But and that's what she said. She was like 41. And now I know in my next appointment, I'm going to say, so are we saying at 41 weeks, we schedule it for like before 42 weeks or what's the case? Like, are you saying I'm going to go in at 41 weeks and they're going to be like, check you in. So there's our thing, like those questions and telling her what I wanted and having that discussion now has led me into like having time to think about it. And I'm not, potentially week.
And I think you bring up two excellent points and honestly tips is like one is the clarification. You're clarifying now. That helps both of you get on the same page. You now know what they're thinking and they know what you're thinking. And, it's like what we talked about. A lot of times when they recommend things, we think like, oh, that means we have to do it. But a lot of times once like, I'll even like, for example, for Dash, we've had he's still a little late on walking. They've recommended things, but I've also then had a conversation with our doctor and been like, do we really need to do this right now? Or can I push it a little bit? So I think it gives you room to ask about the alternatives and like clarify things and kind of get on the same page because just because something's recommended doesn't mean you have to do it right now. Of course, there is a point when I think it is important to intervene and do the things. But yeah, I love letting your body do what it needs to do. And I think that also adds on to another tip is trust your gut. Trust yourself. Hav knows what she wants. She knows her body. We know it better than our doctors. They see us for 15 minutes every once in a while, like every few months. So it's like they don't know. So like they have an idea, but they don't like truly know. So it's like, yeah, trust your gut and trust your, if something feels off, speak up. It can be hard. It's like what Hav said. Sometimes in the moment, it can be easy to just submit and be like, yeah, okay. But that's the time to really like, if you really want something, ask the questions, try and figure it out because you don't want to be dismissed just because, you deserve to know what's happening.
Well, and I think that too is like the flexibility, right, of it is like, and then understanding what the options are because there's different options for inducing. I'm super, like, I like really don't want to go through a Pitocin labor again, personally. If you've had Pitocin and it was a good experience for you, I love that for you. But to me, I'm like, are we talking a membrane sweep? Are we talking, breaking my water? And then having that conversation of like, what happens when you break your water? And these are things that like, again, I have researched a lot, but if you don't ask your doctor, they're probably not going to inform you like the hours you have after breaking your water, or can we do a membrane sweep and then wait a day? Can we break your water and then go into Pitocin? Like, what are the different options? There are different ways to induce labor and knowing what their expectation. And unfortunately, like a lot of doctors, they don't even necessarily get to make that decision. It's the hospital's decision and they have to like go by a standard.
Right. There's a standard, but if you suggest a different thing, then they're,
and they still have to listen. I mean,
right.
It's like we say, like you can refuse things at the end of the day. Like if something, they're going to make you sign paperwork that say if something happens, it's not their fault because you're not listening to their advice. But like you can make a decision, not necessarily saying don't listen to their advice. But yeah, like we're saying, like go in and know what you want, or at least help them inform you and make sure that they are informing you so that you can make the decisions that you want. And then you can work with them. Like I'm saying, I don't want a Pitocin labor. That doesn't mean I'm good at the end of the day. end all be all, I'm going to say absolutely no Pitocin.
Right. You're just trying to find the alternatives first.
Absolutely. I'm going to do what I can to not, and then we'll go from there. And there is there are things like I would rather have Pitocin than have a C-section. So there are levels to it. So I think knowing what you want for your body, and I know some women who want a C-section, and that's perfect for you. And knowing that, and maybe you want to plan your delivery. That's a thing that's really great with hospitals these days and doctors and science is if you want to deliver on a certain date and you want to have a C-section, then you go in and you let them know that and you work with them on that. Just because I want to do it a certain way doesn't mean that's the right way for everybody. But what is right is talking to your doctor about it.
And trusting your gut, doing what's best for you. What Hav does is going to be best for her and her family. That doesn't mean that's best for you and your family. And I do think also to bring up, that's also why we recommend advocating early, because the earlier you advocate, the earlier you can learn about the alternatives. Because there are some alternatives you can't do after a certain point. So I think that's also important that you should definitely talk about them, ask follow-up questions, start figuring it out just because if you need to get another opinion or you need another doctor, it's much better to do it early on than in your third trimester and being stressed that you're not going to be getting that support that you really need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think just to add with support, kind of my last tip is just to make sure you do have support with you. Even if you are a single mom, if it's a friend, if it's a family member, if it's even someone, maybe you have a friend within the hospital, maybe you've befriended a nurse or something. I don't know. But appointments can feel really overwhelming. So just remember that having someone there can help, especially because for me, in my labor, my mom is a nurse. And so I brought her because I knew if I couldn't advocate for myself, she would ask the questions. She would take the notes. She would be, so try and find that person if you can. Like I said, I know we don't all have that, but yeah, it can just help because this is a scary journey. And we all know, the maternal mortality rate in the US is disgustingly high for fucking... Yeah, there we go. So that's just a reminder.
And I will even say, if there is nobody that you can bring with you, the nurses that are there, they're supposed to advocate for you. I could go into my whole experience and whatever, but I think if there's a nurse that you find a connection with, just quick example. For me, my day nurse, I was just, somebody in the room that she had to get going. Thankfully, my night nurses came in and I was like, this is what I want. And they were immediately jumping on it and I latched onto them. I was like, you guys, this is what I need to do for especially at that point for my labor, it hadn't gone the way that I wanted it to. Literally nothing on my birthing plan was done to what I wanted, but they were able to help me advocate for myself in the end to the completion of the labor and delivery, but also make sure I felt safe in a way. I got the epidural. I really didn't want to. I had I needed to. It was what was safe for my body. But they made sure that they changed my positions for me. They took care of me. They informed me on things that I didn't know. Nobody told me that it's normal to throw up or feel nauseous. And I remember waking up from my 30 minutes of rest from my 15 hours of labor thinking I was going to throw up. And one nurse was like, oh my God, she's going to throw up. And the other nurse, she stopped and she was like, hey, you go get, and she came up and she's like, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you. The baby's okay. This is something that happens when you're ready to push, because I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything. So she was like, and she just explained things to me that weren't explained to me. Or she came and checked me and was like, there was no issues with Azzy's positioning, but she was like, we could position her a little bit better. Let's try this with the peanut ball, or let's do this. So I think if there is a nurse, all that to say, if there's a nurse that you feel a connection with, really dig in with them and let them know hey, please, I really need, this is what I want. I want to move my body. I want to be able to do, these things. And I will say advocacy does go into, even when you're getting your epidural, it's really hard when you're in labor to listen to what the anesthesiologist says and stuff, but try to listen to what they say and really I had to get my epidural moved 5 times. I hope that doesn't happen to anybody else. But like that is part of advocating for yourself. And I'm happy I did it. I had 0 complications. It worked perfectly. I was walking 30 minutes after all these things. And could it just be that my body handled it? Well, it could be. But I think that was like when I was like, no, like I've been doing so much stuff that I don't want to do. Like you're not ruining this for me as well. So just a little.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, it's every step. There's every step of the way, whatever you want, I'm like, you need to advocate for yourself. Like Hav said, even if it's like bouncing on the ball in the labor room, or like I know at our hospital, we were even allowed to bring like a rug, like if you wanted to feel comfy in your room. So I do things that make you feel good. Like I can tell you, it is a doozy of a journey once you get to the actual labor part. So
yeah.
And that's another reason to print off your birth wishes though, because when you are in it, sometimes it can be hard to focus and to really think about what you want. And so if you already have it planned out, it can be a lot easier to advocate for yourself. Do you have a podcast and a pile of laundry staring you down? Are you questioning your life choices during nap time or working at midnight with one eye open and 3 tabs running?
Yeah, same. We've lived that chaos. Hey, still living it. That's why we offer podcast editing and post-production services for the moms who have things to say, but 0 time to do all the things. Let us help you get your voice out there without losing your mind, your message, or your weekend.
Think less burnout, more snuggles. Less tech stress, more talking to your audience in peace. Interested? Tap the link in the description to learn more. Plus, we offer free discovery calls, no pressure, just real talk to see if we vibe.
Let's make podcasting easier because you're already doing enough.
One thing I would like to add, because when you were talking about the throwing up, it made me think about it. I will also link Ina May's natural birth book. It was like one of the only books I read during pregnancy, but I was so afraid of labor and like having a bad labor. And it still wasn't great. But that book really, it holds so many beautiful pregnancy stories that it just helps you remind yourself that they're not all bad. They don't all go poorly, and you can't advocate for yourself because like it's just a journey. So I will also link that just because if you need some stories to help. And that's where I learned about the throwing up, is they talked about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just like, if you would like a bunch of different stories, mostly positive, that's definitely a good place to look, because I know, especially online, it seems like there's always negative birth stories. And like I said, I mean, even ours there was some doozies, but yeah, it's nice to hear some good things.
Yeah. And I will say, just adding on to your birth plan, it doesn't have to be just, I don't want an epidural, whatever. Ask about, are you allowed to bring aromatherapy? They're going to tell you, I don't know how much has changed, but there's a lot more different research on like C-sections and stuff with eating. Like, what's your hospital policy on eating? What am I, and there's things like keep your energy up. It depends on how natural you want to go. I could dive in forever, but like those are things too to think about when you're thinking about your birth plan. Do you want to bring honey sticks to give yourself energy? Do you want to bring aromatherapy? Do you want to play certain music while you're going?
Do you want to bring some music?
Do you want, my hospital provided a birth ball and they had a couple other things, but you can bring birth ball if your hospital. So like those are questions to ask your doctor and say, hey, like, do you have a birth ball? Are you going to allow me to walk? And that'll also maybe help you make a decision on how early you want to go to the hospital, things like that. It's not like we're saying, it's not always an option. Sometimes you just need to go. But those are definitely things to think about. And like, I know for me, they told me they're like, we're not going to let you eat. And I mean, granted, how can you stop me? But I made sure, and I went and got food before I went in. But just little things to think about. And on that as well, just like, I guess this is birth plan, but for mentally, when something isn't going to plan for your labor with baby, if you can mentally prepare yourself not to go into super stress mode and ask questions, if they're like, oh, baby's not facing the way that we want to face, we're going to go into, some hospitals are like, we're going to go into C-section. Hey, before we go into C-section, what can we do to get them to that position that we want? Like, is there anything that we can do versus just jumping to it? If that's something that's important to you, but it can be scary. So if you can like just mentally prepare for those types of things to happen. I know it happened with my sister a lot, and she never went into C-section, and she just like gave herself time to think about it and advocate for herself and just asked for like different things before that.
I think that's a great point. I think if you can, like, and even ask them, like, how urgent is this? Like, can I have a couple minutes to think about it? Like, I think that's really important because, yeah, sometimes it is an emergency, but that doesn't mean you aren't allowed to have options and to think, do you want to add this? Something, if you can't afford it and it is in your budget, something I would recommend too is maybe getting a midwife, because during those times, they can be a really big help, especially like Hav said, like maybe the baby's turned the wrong way. In those moments, they can help you find or hear the alternatives and help you through it. But sometimes it's nice to have the calm person because it can be really hard when you're in it and it feels like a really life and death situation, especially when it comes to the health of your baby. Because we all know when it comes down to it, we all are just wanting happy, healthy babies. And that's why we say wishes, because if we have to be flexible and do things we don't want to do for the safety of our kids and ourselves, I know we'll do it. At least I'd hope.
I think the midwife thing, I mean, because that's something that I've kind of had, like doula, midwife, stuff like that. I'm going into mine without one. And I did my first one without one. And I still like wish that we did, but it's a money thing. It's like
a money thing.
Stuff like that. But I know if you can, it's really great. Even if you have a partner with you or somebody to advocate for you. Because I know, like my husband, he's great. And he's going to advocate for me. But he's going to ask me what I want first because it's my body. And like, obviously, if it was like baby and that'd be different. But I remember like a lot of the decisions, he was like, it's your body. Like, I can't tell you what to do.
Well, and they are a lot of the times medically trained. So it just helps, like you were saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, whereas he's like, what do you want? And then I have to think about all the after effects of it. They're more medically trained to be like, in this situation, this is what I would suggest. And I'm not saying like husband, he was great and that's what I needed and whatnot. But I'm just saying, like, if you can, that's great. And even there are some, I know in my area, there are some for people who are more low income that you can, I don't know if they provide midwives or doulas, but they provide like classes and one-on-one support before you go into labor to educate you on things for free. So maybe look at it.
That's a great advice. Because as you're saying that, I agree. And that's partially why I wasn't as concerned about having a doula, because I did have my mom, who in my mind was kind of like a doula, even though it's kind of funny because her and I are actually a lot of times on opposite spectrums when it comes to healthcare. But still, I think it is important to have people that can advocate for you. Because like Hav said, our husbands love us. They want what's best for us. But sometimes they just might not know exactly what to do in that situation because...
Right. And now if I told Tony, if I was like, you tell them to go get me this right now, he would advocate in that way.
Right.
But if I was like, when they were asking about the epidural and I was trying to make that decision, he was like, I can't make that decision for you. Like, what can your body handle? I'm not the one who's going through this right now. I'm here, but it's
kind of like a view.
Yeah, I love you. And like, I'll go yell at them for you, but like, you need to tell me what to yell at them about, kind of thing.
And I get it, because yeah, I mean that's what I would probably be like. I'd be like, I don't want to speak for you, you know.
Right. And I love that. Thank you for not like thinking that you own my body and make a decision for me. Because,
right, but like this is when I need you to.
Right. And I did, like, I think with that, like, just like I was like, I looked at him and I was like, I'm not going to be able to push her out if I don't do it. And he was like, go get them, kind of thing. But fun stuff. It really doesn't have to be scary. And like, I will say in all this, there's a lot of things that I don't want to do again. But at the end of the day, like, was my labor this big traumatizing? Like, no. My baby came and she's beautiful. And will I try to do things differently? Absolutely. But if it went exactly the same, honestly, it'd be okay.
I think about that regularly. I would be so upset if my labor was exactly the same. Okay, I shouldn't say that. Most of my birth wishes went well. Like, I felt really good about it. It's just with how long and how, like, daunting it was. I'm like, the thought of going through 31 hours again.
That
sounds real. But then I'm like, but I would still do all the same steps. But I agree. I'm like, you just don't know. It's such a labor. You never know. So it's like, I'd like it to go the same. If it doesn't, that's okay. But I agree. It's just funny because when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, for the most part, I would like it to go the same minus like half of it.
No, if I was, like, we just get into like, here's our birth stories, everybody. No, with me, the thing is I made the decision prematurely to induce with Pitocin. And there was a lot of things that, honestly, a Pitocin labor, like, didn't need to happen, but because of situations that my nurses were in and like the care that I was given that wasn't necessarily up to par at the beginning, made it worse than it was. But I'm saying, like, if I get to 41 and 6 and my doctor's like, we're doing Pitocin, like, am I gonna freak out? Be like, absolutely not. Like, no, I will do it. I did 12 hours of labor with basically being overdosed with Pitocin. And then I gave in and gave an epidural. Would I get the epidural sooner? Second time around, knowing what I know, probably. But like, but that's where for me, I'm like, at the end of the day, like, if we got to the point where they're like, we're inducing, like, at least I tried to get there versus with, I made the decision to prematurely do it.
And I agree with you. I'm like, at the end of the day, I would do it all the same because the fact that I knew my baby came out healthy and I came out healthy and like compared to like, and I think it's because Hav and I, if you guys didn't know, we studied a lot of this stuff in college and just like the dark side of it. And so like the thought that it came out like in my mind was really good. I'm like, it's hard to argue. So I agree. I'm like, you want to do things differently, of course. And I'm sure, like you said, if you will, you will. If you can't, I'm like, I know you're just going to do what's best. So it's just, yeah, I think it's just a reminder that your health matters.
And I will even say, like, I hate that this is even a thing that needs to be, but we're 2 white women.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately for a lot of minorities and people of color, like, this really is something that I hate to say, but like, you need to do for yourself. And if you can find an OB who is like a woman of color, would be fantastic. But if you can find an OB who is conscious of that, like, I think that is really important. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do with your body there are so many differences, and we know that science has not, as advanced as we are, this hasn't been researched enough. And there are so many women of color who go in and are misrepresented and not understood. And that's, I feel like, where most of the scary stories come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, if I'm saying that I need to learn how to advocate, if you can have somebody advocate for you, please do. But if you can't, please know your worth, and please know that, like, they cannot force you to do anything. And just, unfortunately, we have to be ready to fight as mamas. Like, that's the life that we live. And unfortunately for women of color, more so. So I think it's really important.
Yes, and I'm really glad you brought that up. We will actually I will find a stat because it's like actually crazy how astronomically different it is, especially in the US, the maternal mortality rate and it's still extremely high for white women, like compared to other countries, and then you add on the disparity with people of color. Yeah. And so we will definitely link that just so that you can really see, because it is crazy. But I do want to add that Dr. Rankins, I believe is who I said, that I will link in the thing. She does a lot of work specifically for women of color and things like that. So if you are someone that is looking for extra advice on that, definitely check her out. Like I said, I will link her stuff because it'll help with the birth plans, but I think it just adds another layer of advocacy because it's important, like Hav said. And like we said, your health matters. And if you don't have a good provider that, asks, like, welcomes questions and welcomes like you to collaborate them, then definitely switch if you can, because you deserve to be heard and to not be dismissed. I think that's it for season 2.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. It went by so fast.
It did. Thank you guys for sticking with us and being part of our village. It means a lot to us because we know how hard it is to be moms just trying to get by through our journey. And then, of course, this season getting by through pregnancy, because it can be a doozy, as Hav has talked about throughout the season. So with that, we will be back with season 3 in a few weeks or so. So if you do have any ideas for topics or guests or anything like that, please submit them. We will link it in the description and honestly anywhere else, just because we want to hear your advice. This show is for you. Of course, we're here, but it's for you. So we definitely want your opinion. So yeah, we'll make sure to link that. Otherwise, if you have been loving it, please rate, review, share it with other moms. The more word it gets out, the more we can band together and connect with each other.
Absolutely. I just gonna double up on that feedback. Like I just said, we have the experiences that we have. And so that's mostly what we can talk about. But the more feedback that we have and the more stories that we get, the more that we can share different experiences.
Yeah. And season 3 is still kind of up in the air on topics. So if you have some ideas, definitely let us know, just because, like Hav said, I mean, we can't do it without you. So definitely submit them. Otherwise, we so look forward to chatting with you in season 3. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for sharing your time with us today. We're so glad you're part of this messy, beautiful village.
If this episode made you laugh, cry, or feel just a little more human, pass it on to a mom friend who needs it too. And hey, if you haven't already, hit subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more moms find the show and gives us a tiny dopamine hit. Let's be real.
Until next week, keep the kids alive and your coffee hot, or at least reheated once.